Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jan, for inviting me. Okay. So I would like to convince you today that psychedelics are indeed the holy grail of medicine, that they have always been an integral part of human evolution and consciousness, and they always will be so, just that we forgot about it for a little while, for a century or so. This is the unfortunate situation that we're forced with today. We're leaving this sick and disturbed world for our children. There is no compassion or vision. I also have to say that Brazil is still burning. No one talks about it. The focus has been shifted. Every week we hear of an indigenous leader killed, a tribe destroyed, displaced. It's a very sad situation. There's about 200 new pesticides reintroduced into Brazilian practice. Chemicals that have been banned all over the world are now being used in areas of highest biodiversity in the world. So what can we do? What can be done? Well, I know what to do, but is it possible? I would make it mandatory for politicians to indulge in these rituals. I would make like a TV show, a Big Brother, and then I would ask him, do you still want to build that pipeline? And how many acres do you want to cut down and plant transgenic soy and spray white pesticide? On the other hand, the natives, or the primitives as we used to call them, still maintain a close contact with the divinities of nature. They preserve the ancient ways. They don't die of cancer. There's no PTSD, depression, Parkinson's disease, nothing like that, but they die of starvation and white man's bullet. Nature is kind. It gives us free vaccines with antidepressant actions in form of a little frog. This has been patented many times in the United States, but no royalties have ever been paid to this tribe. The story goes that Page's tribe was dying, and he took ayahuasca and asked for mercy, and he saw God handing him this frog. And after his death, his spirit still lives inside and heals his people. In North America, we have Bufo alvarius, which is the true psychedelic toad, which contains 5-methoxytryptamine and Bufotenin. Kampo is mainly used for hunting and for cleaning the body before ayahuasca. Bog means God in Russian and Serbian. The natives are painted white. They will go to meet their ancestors, get a new name and a mission in life. It is the principal anti-addictive remedy that we have, excellent for heroin addiction. These things, Iboga and his cousins, are not serotonin agonists, but upon demethylation to Iboga, they became neurogenic. And I think this is the single most important trait that all of the compounds that I will talk to you about today perform. They help us regrow neurons, and they make us more intelligent. What can be more important than that? Ayahuasca, you've all heard about this. In Quechua, it means the rope of death or defunct, because the experience reminds that one of dying. The legend says that Chacrona was a lovely and a young, beautiful counselor to the king. The kingdom prospered. When she died, everything went to ruins, war and plague came about. So the king sent Mariri to her grave to contact her soul and ask for help. After a few months of meditation and prayer, the Chacrona grew out of her grave. So that's a story of resurrection, very similar to mushrooms. When we take this stuff, we say entrar na força, or enter the force. There's no Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, although Yoda appears occasionally. Excellent remedy for Parkinson's, diabetes, but we say it's good for everything. It is legal here. We can participate in sessions. There is also a psychedelic worm, or better to say a hallucinogenic larvae of a moth, described by a French anthropologist more than 200 years ago. Unfortunately, the tribe that would prepare it is no longer with us, so the recipe is lost. All I know, you have to take the head out and the intestines, then make some kind of paste, fry it. If anybody is interested, come down and we can watch The Dune afterwards, or Alice in Wonderland. John talked about this, okay, 5-HT2A receptors, 5-HT1A, all the classical hallucinogens bind to these receptors. And serotonin 2A receptor is most highly concentrated in the prefrontal cortex. It is the part of our brain that distinguishes us from our primate cousin, and most important in evolution. But our friend Woody would disagree. He would say, well, when the aliens kidnap him, that's my second favorite organ. This is a male brain in action. I put this on purpose. We'll come back to it later. Mescaline was the first psychedelic known to Western man, discovered by Hefter. He experimented with it. To me, the most amazing thing is that the remaining Indian tribes of North America were kind of baptized by this sacrament. They would all say, "We walk in Christ in spirit without the interference of the white man who spilled his blood." The Ayahuasqueros say the same thing. Hoffman made LSD in 1938, but waited 7 years to tell us about it. I think he's not telling us the whole story. He later isolated and synthesized psilocybin, and he would do so by doing thin layer preparative chromatography, and he would taste all the fractions by himself, right? So it was like 0, 0, +1, +5. This must be psilocybin. Then he took the synthetic psilocybin to Maria Sabina in Mexico, and she confirmed it was the right stuff. If we microdose the rats with LSD for a couple of weeks, they become more intelligent. They run through the maze faster. If we give them a higher dose, they become psychotic, aggressive, and even start to bite the technicians. So microdosing is good. This is Texas last week, I think. God bless them. May they all do a high dose every day. LSD and psilocybin are probably two most safest substances known to us. They're anti-addictive, and there has never been a lethal dose. And LSD has graced the human race with two most important discoveries of the last century: the structure of the double helix and PCR. Okay, we'll spend some time here. Shulgin started playing around with mescaline, rearranging the methoxy group. He found out that 2,5 is the optimal substitution with a halogen in the 4 position. He also played around with the side chain. Today, in this little arrow, we can put hundreds and hundreds of compounds, many untold stories, only known to a few of us. Today, we get to this structure, which is orthomethoxybenzyl, fly compound with various substituents in the para positions. These compounds are more potent than LSD, but there is some inherent danger with them. There have been some overdoses, and that saddens me a lot. Amputations. There are batches found with 4-fluoroamphetamine. God knows what these guys are doing. You can buy some of these ingredients in China. So this will give us chemists a bad rap. It will prolong the prohibition, and the stigma will continue. So please be careful with these things. DMT, right, present in children have twice as much DMT in their brains. So that story that goes to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must be like children, right? Psilocybin, the active ingredient of mushrooms, is quickly converted to psilocin, the active ingredient. 5-methoxy-DMT and Bufotenin present in ayahuasca and frogs. Substitution at the 5 position favors selectivity at serotonin 1A receptor, which is overexpressed in Buddhist monks, priests, people who meditate or maintain a daily spiritual activity. So I would say this is the true spirit molecule, not DMT. My little contribution to the field is a synthesis of 4-fluoro-5-methoxypyrrolidine and tryptamine, the most potent and selective tryptamine serotonin 1A receptor. Let me breathe a bit. When you inject this compound into rats, their body temperature falls for almost 4 hours for a degree and a half. They display serotonin syndrome. Their lower lips retract, they squat, they don't move around compared to the placebo rat who continues an exploratory behavior, runs around and sniffs. It's pretty comic sight. LSD is the king of psychedelics, right? I'll just mention the LSD synthesized by my former lab mate. I talked to some of you about this. He took the diethyl side chain, constrained it into, John talked about this too, also in SS-dimethylamino cyclobutane. Rats say it's LSD, receptors say it's LSD, but it's really completely devoid of any hallucinogenic visual activity. So that would be called a non-hallucinogenic hallucinogen. I think it would make a great antidepressant or even a psychotherapy tool. Missing pieces of the puzzle are the superpsilocin and 13-hydroxy-LSD. I worked on this compound. I got to the indole stage, and then I had to change projects. Yields were low. I have a new synthesis. I'll nail this sucker. Eventually, 13-hydroxy and 14-hydroxy-LSD are found in monkeys after LSD administration. We believe that it is direct oxidation product by P450 of LSD. And this compound would hit D2 receptors important in schizophrenia. That's why some people experience fear and paranoia and have bad trips after 90 minutes, 2 hours. Okay, this is what I was trying to tell in the last talk. Psilocybin in small amounts causes growth of hippocampal neurons. in small doses. In higher doses, it starts behaving like an antagonist. Totally, its behavior it is inverted. And few people know it has this beautiful purple color. It is rather stable, unlike psilocin, presumably because of intermolecular hydrogen bond. It's present in more than 100 species of mushrooms. And I don't know when this thing will be legalized. Here we can buy mushrooms online, but it's illegal, so it's a big confusion. If they don't legalize it soon, I'm opening up my own congregation. My baptismal name will be Frater Fungi. Something's beeping here. I don't know if you guys can see me. Let's continue. LSD, DMT, and DOI also perform neurogenesis. This is a rat hippocampal neuron growing. When we are depressed, we display this dendritic atrophy where neurons basically stop growing. They retract their neurons, right? They get into this defense mode, and psychedelics can completely revert the state. PTSD, depression, as I said, neurogenesis is very important. And we have a little ultra-high dilution substance that we use with great success in Alzheimer's patients and dementia. As I didn't have any neuronal cells, I experimented with plants, and after 1 week, you can see exactly that the root growth is increased. Does this extrapolate to neurons? I think so. Vital force is universal. People who grow cannabis and mushrooms also know about these things. It markedly increases the yield and the quality of the product. However, if you apply it twice, the plants just keep on growing. They never flower. Chronic stress causes neurodegeneration through apoptosis, probably necrosis. There is always oxidative stress in neurodegeneration, in depression, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, anything that concerns the brain, that happens. But during high stress, the brain makes high cortisol levels and reprograms hippocampal stem cells to, instead of making astrocytes, which is gray cells, the brain starts making oligodendrocytes, which are myelin insulating cells, and that can shrink the prefrontal cortex, right? There's a bunch of other things that go on, but solitary confinement is the worst type of stress one can experience. All the prisoners, after 3 years, attempt suicide by banging their hands on the wall. The whole world is experiencing this now. We'll see increase of heart attacks, depression, headaches, everything that can go wrong. It's because of this. DMN network is basically, think of a computer when it's not on or off, when it's in that standby mode. And people, when they're task-free, they like to think of three things. They think about time. They think about the past, what we should have done, could have done, didn't do. About the future, we'll get old, sick, and die. We think about others, right? And that's what guys do. Or about ourselves. And that's completely unnecessary. The Buddhists call this the monkey mind. In astrology, we call this ego. Duality, mana, it is the part that always wants to feel good, to be loved, right? To make plans, and God laughs at us. And this pathology this DMN is, networking is overactive in various pathologies, right? But when we take psychedelics, when we meditate, when we are hypnotized, this activity is reduced. And ayahuasca does exactly that, MDMA and other psychedelics. It basically dampens this background chatter noise. Now, how does ayahuasca heal us? PTSD and depression, and I think every psychosomatic disease is a type of repression. We stick the things, the fears we don't want to be faced with into our subconscious mind, which I think has to do with the amygdala. Prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is the subconscious mind. So when your mom tells you, son, clean the house, you put everything under the carpet and go play soccer, that's what happens. The first part of the healing process, if you ever taken ayahuasca, is hypothermic and anxiolytic action, which I think is mediated by 1A receptors, as I've shown you. Then we get this retrieval or destabilization of memories of amygdala. So amygdala is inhibited, and hippocampus and prefrontal cortex get activated in the healing part. The last part involves a neurotrophin, BNDF, and which is antidepressive, and it lowers cortisol, increases synaptic plasticity, and neurogenesis occurs. So basically, we are presented with our memories. We see them, we discard them, and then we regrow new neurons. And a couple of these sessions can equal a lifetime of psychotherapy. There's probably many other things that go on, histone deacetylase inhibitors, NMDA, cholinergic dopamine, but I think this is the beginning part, right? I think that LSD binds DNA. That has been shown in a publication many years ago. Nichols' son showed that it activates these early genes. But the exact mechanism is not known. Where does it bind? Major groove, minor groove, really don't know. So back then they tried to demonize, saying that LSD causes cancer by chromosomal breaks. Another nice fairy tale was that flashbacks occur because few of LSD molecules get stuck in fatty tissue, and 20 years later you're driving a car, and then you have a flashback, and then you kill your whole family, if you believe that. The interesting thing is that they teach us in school that 90% of our DNA is junk, is introns, which I don't believe. I think that nature is perfect. It's not like a bank. It gives us everything back. We just yet have to find out what these introns do. And nature never deceives us. It is we who like to deceive ourselves, right? Okay. I thought a lot about if I should talk about this. It's kind of controversial. I just found out about this, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's time to present this to the psychedelic community. New medicine, new German medicine postulated by Dr. Hammer, who left us 3 years ago. Really quickly, he lost his son in a tragic accident, who died in his arms of gangrene and horrible pains 3 months later. He developed testicular cancer immediately after that, 5 months. He lost his wife. 5 years later, his sister, who was Miss Germany, 76, and a known actress, is trying to reopen the case against the last prince of Italy who killed him. Well, Hammer started talking to his cancer patients as he was the chief of the hospital in Munich and Tübingen, and he realized that all of them had experienced some kind of serious trauma, some kind of traumatic experience before they got sick. So he started taking PET scans of their brains, and this is what he saw. And this is really amazing to me. Perfect concentric circles in various different areas of the brain. Sometimes they are not that perfect. Sometimes they appear as a little blob or an ellipsoid growth. So he went to Siemens, who produced the PET scans, and asked him, what is this? Is this thing real that I'm seeing? So they gave him what to look for. So he repeated his experiments, changing the angles, looking. So he found out that it's a true biological phenomena that changes over time. This is a phantom scan. It is only one big circle, usually in the middle of the PET scan. His only disciple says that when she met him, he looked at the PET scan and told her, you have a lump in your right breast and you have pain in that part of the back. She was amazed. He could see the whole life of the patient just looking at these things, right? The first thing I thought of are these toroidal vortices that marine mammals make. Then I thought, do our thoughts, do our emotions have shape or energy? Certainly they do. So be careful what you think of. In my house, it's prohibited to curse only when I lose a game of chess or when I drive. Then all hell breaks loose. And when I'm uncertain, I always check the Akashic records with Mr. Simpson, right? He says, Tauruses, yes, indeed, are important, right? So he postulated the first law. I will let you look at the others, where he states that every disease is a threefold simultaneous instant biological process that starts with a conflict shock in our subconscious. Immediately the brain is alerted, and then we get the corresponding organ affliction, right? Now, this stress, what might be a shock to some, might not even faze another person. It can be prenatal, it can be divorce of your parents, loss of somebody, loss of a pet, war certainly produce horrible experiences, right? Where these circles in the brain appear, it's dependent on the endoderm, mesoderm, or ectoderm, these embryonic germ layers. And also the organs may start growing tumors, ulcerate, or completely stop working. And Pagelanza, the healing that we do here with psychedelics works on all three levels, right? Homeopathy is very specific for the emotional part. That's why you can get some magnificent cure just with these little white pills, while modern medicine only treats the organ by suppression. We know that. And if you know a bit of alchemy, you'll know what I'm talking about. The most amazing thing to me that he was able to map all the brain layers, cerebellum, cortex, brainstem, medulla, and connect the dots and find out this biological conflict with a part of the brain and what cancer would be produced. I won't talk about astrology, now we'll leave it for some other time. But this is what I found out. Coronavirus 2005, met a Chinese doctor who died 35 days after. They pumped him up with antibiotics, antivirals, and prednisone. See the little bump here, right? Bronchial mucosa, according to Hammer. This is coronavirus 2020, bronchial mucosa and laryngeal mucosa showing up. So the old German folks had some tricks up his sleeve, I believe. Now they're looking at antidepressants as to treat COVID. Imagine what psychedelics would do to these things. That bromofly is probably one of the most potent anti-inflammatory compounds. They're also neurogenic, so we can basically treat the brain immediately with psychedelics instead of antidepressants. And in the future, we'll probably have these biofeedback machines that will just send an electromagnetic shock and resolve the whole thing. Cats know about this already. They're very smart animals. We're finishing now. Calotropis procera, apple of Sodom, belongs to the family of Asclepius, who was the father of Hygeia, whose symbol we use for pharmacy. Daddy, what is that drawing on the pharmacy? It's your mommy eating ice cream, son. Well, the medic from our company patented this many years ago. He was initially criticized by the medical community. How could you do that? Blah, blah, blah. But this looks like a brain, and we also call it the old man's testicle and the old man's beard, right? So remember Woody Allen, right? It's mentioned in the Bible many times. Well, now, just in the last couple of years, this is what we're seeing. It's cholinergic, it's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, antidepressive, active as a prefrontal hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. It's neurogenic, helps with mitochondria, and it's BNDF activated. What else could you want? So, as it looks like a testicle, we have about 300 to 400 phytochemicals that we tested for various lines of cancer. It's probably one of the most potent and selective remedies for prostate cancer. So we like to joke when duty calls, I don't know if you can see this, Inspector Clouseau. And if new medicine is valid, what Hammer says, and all diseases begin in the end in the brain, which I think is valid, then we can say that psychedelics are indeed the holy grail of medicines. If you don't believe me, you can look up in the night sky and you see this big tryptamine spinning around Polaris, Dhruva, Pole Star making a big swastika. It's a Kala Chakra Ganesha, creating the world. There are cognitive enhancements, non-toxic, non-addictive, but the most important thing is that we have to make them available immediately to terminal patients. That's, if we're a compassionate society, that's the first thing we need to do, to ease their suffering. I'd like to thank these three guys. After reading Shulgin's book, I knew I had to do psychedelic chemistry, but I didn't know about Dr. Dave. He was pretty smart. He kept a low profile. I know in his book he says Indiana college professor, but I didn't know. But after finishing my master's, I did go and work for Nichols. Lovely times. Unfortunately, we don't have a lab like this. Camelot is closed. We need new compounds. We need to reestablish a place where we can openly study human consciousness with psychopharmacology and synthesis. Stewart, few people know about Stewart. He's the guy who wrote the whole experimental of pickle and tickle, the mastermind behind all the synthesis of psilocybin, LSD, the LSD analog that I showed you. I learned a lot from him. And every time my car would break down, he was there for me. Thanks, buddy. Dr. Ricardo, the real Dr. Shemus, who invented calotropis, right? He never did get to do his PhD with Carl Sagan, but he became an honorary member. And Fabio, who tested all these compounds, he makes the most delicious basil brandy that somehow mysteriously disappeared. I'm finishing. Nichols came to Rio to give a talk during my postdoc. We went to Corcovado, went around town. He plays a mean harmonica, noticed the LSD t-shirt, and we both ended up marrying lovely Brazilian ladies. Unlike Shulgin, I love samba. I was born in Africa. My mom was a classical ballerina, and I was on stage even before I was born. I'd like to say we have to take care of our nature, not just the plants, but the microorganisms and the coral, because without nature, we're nothing. Meu Pai abençoe todos. Thank you. Questions? Okay. Can I see something good? Amazing presentation. Thank you. What the most healing application of psychedelics that has yet to be studied in clinical trials? Well, I think this direct effect on the brain. We should start taking PET scans of the patient, see if there is any trauma, and then start giving them some microdose of psilocybin. Back then, I didn't know what microdosing. Now we're finding out amazing effects. I think the most important thing is this neurogenesis, that we can repair our brains. If we repair our brains, we will heal ourselves, heal our bodies automatically. Let me see. Did I go over time? 38 seconds left. Okay, let me go. I'm only seeing the comments now. We can hear and see you. Hit the screen, PowerPoint. Okay. I was pretty upset. I thought I wouldn't be able to pull this off, but what happens to someone on SSRIs who takes Bufotenin? I wouldn't mix the two. You already have increased serotonin level. If you take Bufotenin, that your serotonin will go up. We don't know. When we take people to ayahuasca sessions, they have to be off any medication, especially antidepressants or something like that. It can cause serious heart problems. Meta-analysis, increase mortality. Yes, no, synthetic antidepressants. I'm all for nature. Thank you. Slides, yes, I will make the slides available. Holy Grail of Medicine, thank you. Most promising. Great. One has my email. If you want to get in touch, Is LSD being studied? No. It is, I think, regulated it appeared on the street. I think it's banned in Switzerland and in Sweden, US, no. But I think LSD would be like a great compound to start with, because you cannot overdose on these things. You can have a negative effect, right? There's nothing visual that you can see. People, when they take mega doses of LSD, they can, there's never been someone killed himself, but there is one case where a guy jumped off the building when the CIA spiked his drink and he thought he betrayed his country and he killed himself. And many years later, the Clinton paid them $1.2 million, something like that. So these visual effects can freak you out, but with LSD, I don't think so. Okay, am I done? Thank you very much.